Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5.
It's been a very fast-moving program today. Jonny Athletic will join at the bottom of the hour. Good balance today, I think. Ben Gessling gave us some bonus time early on free agency, National Football League, which Gaardsy's about to make a big part of this top 5 at 5. Luigi in studio as well. Clayton from Rochester with maybe the text of the day. By July, you and A-Raj will be in the friends and family tent sharing a kombucha drink. Well, how good would that be?
A-Raj will have to get it from the friends and family tent and bring it out to you.
Good callback.
You're not going to be allowed in there.
Very well played.
So hopefully A-Raj can get in there.
Yeah. If my ability to get in there has already been established as that's a hard
limited.
A hard no, unless KOC brings the special exotic water out.
You're not going to get that in there.
That's for sure.
That was the line of camp.
All right, what do we got?
Let's start with the headline, which is the Darnold dilemma has turned into Darnold dollars, 100.5 million of them. That is the official number that I'm reading from ESPN.com. It's seen between 100 and 110, but it looks like it's a 3-year, $100.5 million deal, includes $55 million guaranteed money. That according to Shefty, Pelissero, Rappaport, everybody. So Darnold, we learned on Friday when they traded for Geno Smith, I should say when Seattle traded Geno Smith to the Raiders, that they apparently were targeting Darnold. And like many Sam Darnold passes this season, that pass by Seattle was on target, and they have landed Sam Darnold. So we laughed with him, we cried with him, we doused him with water.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever put any chains on him.
Well, ESPN just showing, the story and some highlights. This is going to sound preposterous, but I think Vikings fans are going to miss him. I mean, he
was
made
awesome.
a lot of unbelievable throws until he didn't. And that's the rub. And quite frankly, like I said, I got suckered in by the Jackals, who said there's no market for him. Clearly, there was enough of a market for him that he got, again, we got Baker Mayfield money, basically, right? With a little bit of inflation.
Which we've been talking about for 3 months.
But we've been told for a while, nope, not going to work. That money's not going to be there because of the way he finished the season. Well, that turned out to be bad reporting. And that's where I'm back to, we should have franchised him. And then, because you can always work out the deal later, right? Now, you can't maybe know that Seattle's going to be motivated by the fact that they intend to trade their starting quarterback so that then they need one. Geno Smith for a number 3 sent to the Raiders on Friday, which we discussed then, which certainly made it seem like, okay, he's got a place to land. They're motivated. If they do something like this, they're motivated, and we don't think they're motivated for Daniel Jones. We don't think they're motivated for Aaron Rodgers, who right now is still on the market, correct? Allegedly.
Yeah, I haven't seen much.
The Giants and the Steelers, the 2 front runners for A-Raj, we're considered a dark horse. We're probably going to regret. I mean, I can see it coming, man. He's going to go undefeated in September for the Steelers. He's going to have, by the end of the month, like 12 touchdown passes and 1 pick. And they're going to be the story of the first month of the season. And we're going to be suffering from FOMO as our rookie quarterback has to have his knee flushed again with another minor surgery. And we're trying to figure out whether one of our backup quarterbacks, and by the way, he can't be Pasternaut because he just signed a 2-year deal to go to New England.
Yeah. KOC should be getting a lot of cuts.
That's true.
Mullins, Pasternaut, Darnold.
So I guess that's our question now is who's going to be our backup quarterback? Because it sounds like it's unlikely that we have the guts to really dig in on a 1-year all-in deal for Rodgers. So you have to find someone if you're not going to have him compete with JJ, you're going to hand him the job, then you got to have somebody who's going to be a backup. Now there are some backups available. Is Gardner Minshew available as a backup?
I think he is.
Okay.
I think he is. I don't know for sure.
And then the kid from he was in Cleveland most recently. Who am I thinking of? Their backup.
Who is Cleveland's backup?
He was also in New Orleans. We love him. He throws like...
Oh, Jameis Winston?
Jameis Winston can throw 18 touchdown passes and 18 interceptions in 4 games.
Yeah, I was going to say in a month.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of Seattle, the Vikings, as is custom, travel to play Seattle in 2025. We will get a Darnold JJ matchup, allegedly, because the Vikings are on Seattle's schedule. We go out there again this year, so we'll get to see. I know, as is custom.
Yeah, it is custom. That's very true.
Let me ask you this real quickly, because we've talked about it the entire show, but does this Darnold deal, and I'd be curious what Rubes think, does this Darnold deal have anybody reflecting on what the Vikings should have done?
Well, that's been asked, and it's a fair question.
Because this is the Baker deal we talked about for the last half of the season. Could they give him this deal? Would he accept this deal?
So the yearly would be about $35 million a year.
About 33.
$33 million a year. Well, I mean, I said it. My original idea is I'd take him 2 years for 40. Obviously, that turned out to not be enough.
Right.
Is another 13? Is it what's too much?
Right.
For Sam Darnold, I don't know. It's not massive. I mean, a lot of people wanted to compare this to Cousins. You can on several levels, including the finances of it. This is nothing like the Kirk Cousins deal that he signed with Atlanta, correct?
No.
Nothing like.
This isn't
pales.
Obscene money.
No,
it's less money.
Not. It's a fair question.
He's younger.
It's not. It's a number that indicated that the market hadn't shriveled completely, right?
But it's not crazy.
It's not crazy money. Yeah, and it's a very fair question.
There was times where people were saying, would he take that deal because of what they thought might be
correct?
I mean, there were people saying out loud $40 to $50 million a year.
45 to 50 million. You're exactly right. Yes.
It didn't last long.
And 30 is more than 20, but it's not a number where you go, oh my God, are you kidding me? You can't even consider that. So I think it's an absolutely fair question to ask at this point that, what's the right, because it's a 3-year deal, but that doesn't really mean anything, right? I mean, the guaranteed money is what matters. It's 55.
Right.
By the third year, you don't have to probably give him anything, I'm guessing, if you don't want him to continue to be your quarterback. So I'm hoping the reporting is done. I mean, what was if the Vikings ever made an offer, what was the best offer they made?
Right.
And how comparable was it? How much, bigger is this offer than the one the Vikings gave? I still have to believe it must have been considerable, because if you're Darnold, if they're close, you ain't going anywhere, because Seattle might be going in the wrong. That's what's weird about this move by Seattle is they traded away their best receiver to Pittsburgh. I don't know how much else they have. They were 10-7 last year, but their infrastructure is better than like some of the teams that were out there, like Tennessee or New York, as in the Giants. But I don't know how much better. And then if you're Darnold, you go, well, is it worth the difference? But we have no idea. Maybe the Vikings didn't offer much at all,
and maybe they didn't because
maybe they didn't.
Because I'm sure they want him to come back and compete with JJ, right? Because at some point they do want JJ McCarthy to be the QB. Johnny Munt and Nick Mullins.
We play in Pittsburgh this year too? Somebody said we play in Pittsburgh this year.
We do.
As do the Packers.
We do, yes.
So there's your A-Rod story. If he ends up there, that'd be juicy.
I'm trying to see where else we go. We go to Dallas, go to the Giants again, go to the Los Angeles Chargers again, and then the divisional games. Johnny
$55 million guaranteed ain't that much by current standards anymore.
I know. That's why I'm saying it doesn't make anybody pause or think, should the Vikings have decided to do that?
It should, but most of the people were good riddance on Darnold anyway, and they'll say, no, I want the meter to start on JJ. So that's where it gets interesting. If somehow, and it's not going to happen, but somehow there'd be this stunner and Rodgers would end up here, would people revolt?
Right.
Because I think they would early, but then I think they actually might get into it, especially, obviously, if he were to outperform your expectations.
Lou Nanny was in town to do his taxes, meet with some builders in Balsam Lake, but also consult with the builders of McCarthy Manor. Because McCarthy Manor is now in full development mode, and I'm sure units will be available by Memorial Day, if not sooner. Cam Bynum's on his way to Indy. What was your favorite Monday bumper-to-bumper Vikings report moment? 4 years, $60 million there. And Johnny Munt and Nick Mullins on the way to Jacksonville.
And then, you mentioned we added a cornerback named Isaiah Rodgers.
I had not yet. 2 years, I think $15 million.
And then we got a backup safety named Bubba Baker? No.
I think that's his name.
Bubba something. It's alliterative.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last name. I don't think he's played a lot in the National Football. In fact, I don't think he's played any in the National Football League. But he's been in a couple of camps. and he's been in it. Was it the USFL or the UFL?
Yes. I don't know which one. He played for Birmingham, whichever.
Or the Arena League.
Whichever team has that league.
Right.
Bubba Bolden. Bubba Bolden is his name. 25 years old.
Somebody's trying to suggest the Vikings offered 1 year, $25 million. Is that on the record?
I haven't seen it.
Somebody reported that?
I haven't seen it, but I'm not saying it's not true. Haven't seen it, but not saying that it's not true. So that's kind of the Vikings update, the NFL update. I'm sure we'll get to some of that with Jonny Athletic as well. Let's talk Timberwolves quickly. Another pretty dominant performance. One so dominant that Anthony Edwards tried to check into the game with 6:30 to go in the fourth quarter. I don't know if you saw this.
I did see that.
And Finchy said,
waved him off.
Yeah, well, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're up by 20.
And you don't need a technical foul.
Yeah, we need to keep you in.
Yes.
We're cooking. Julius Randle's playing very well. 14 points, 10 assists, 7 rebounds. Rudy Gobert playing very well in his return. 16 points, 8 rebounds, a couple of steals as well. And they rout the San Antonio Spurs Davy 141 to 124. They've won 5 in a row, but haven't gained a bunch of ground because Golden State won't stop losing either. They've won 4 in a row, including 9 of 10. So we are percentage points behind the Golden State Warriors for the 6th spot. They have 6. We are currently
We don't play them the rest of this year. I think we're done with Golden State.
We are,
which is too bad. That'd have been a nice little added attraction down the stretch. So we got Denver in Denver Wednesday night, and then we got another game with Denver soon as well, right? Don't we?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I don't know the exact date. I'll pull it up here quickly, but we should have 2 more.
We've taken so far, after that hiccup with the, who was it we lost?
Jazz.
Utah.
When Ant was out.
Right, when Ant was out, because the technical, we have done a good job of taking care of business with a bad schedule. Even, I think, fending off Miami, not a great Miami team, but a feisty Miami team there, and we made history in that game. I think you may have seen it. It's the first time in the history of the franchise that we won a game with nobody scoring more than 15 points.
Yeah.
Which say that they had very good balance in that game. They tried in some ways to give it away
with
late.
The free throws and stuff.
A couple turnovers late, but they, that's the old. I'll never rip a game you muck out against Miami. You just grind it out. That can be a fiber victory. And last night they toyed with an obviously injured, riddled San Antonio Davy club as well. Great, probably, as Finchy said, the best ball movement of the season. We're going to get to all of that and largely the Randle angle with Jonny Athletic in about 15 minutes.
Denver on Wednesday. We think Mike Conley's going to join later in the show tomorrow after they land in Denver. It's his week to join us.
Uncle Mike, you mean?
We're hoping to get Uncle Mike on.
Right.
They also play the Nuggets Tuesday, April 1st in Denver, so that's something to watch. Minnesota Wild lost 3-1 yesterday afternoon at the X to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin. We had some issues with them.
Yes, we did.
Marc-Andre Fleury started his final game against his former team, took a picture with them.
They're not very good either.
They're not good at all.
No.
They had lost, I think, 4 in a row coming in. Hadn't looked very good.
Yeah.
But
so this is the start of a 7-game homestand. Which ordinarily you say, this is great.
Yeah.
But we've been a 500 team all season at home.
I was at the game with my daughter.
Who's been worse at home? The Wild or the Gopher Men? Basketball.
Sadly, I think the Gopher Men.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's not good company. I was at the game with my daughter, and they were promoting it the whole time that they're basically calling it their own version of March Madness. They have 11 games at the X, I think was the number, that continuously got beaten into my head yesterday. But when you have multiple power plays, including a 4-minute power play, double minor, where you generate very little offense, let alone a shot, it's not the greatest place to be in the world. And now things are tightening up. They're out of the Central Division playoff spot. Colorado has jumped them for that, and they're just 6 points clear. Even though they hold the top wild card spot right now, they're just 6, maybe 7 points clear of teams trying to jump up for them.
Yeah, well, it's getting scary, is what you're saying, in effect. It's starting to get a little bit scary.
It's not comfortable.
A little bit nerve-wracking at this point. And none of the eye tests or analytic stats are good, right? Our power play is still not very effective. We can't score. And our penalty kill still stinks.
And we get to play Colorado tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's true.
Who's surging and made some trades and is good.
Bigger trades than we did, for sure. Larry Mondello guy, I think you guys should shoot to get Bubba Bolden as your weekly guest, because how great is the alliteration on Bumper to Bumper with Bubba Bolden?
Problem is, he's probably going to be gone after a year. He's going to be on another practice squad.
Yeah, that's very.
It'd be one and done.
There is some breaking quarterback trade news we'll discuss after a very brief pause, and then we'll prepare for John Athletic. We'll also tell you why you should feel really, really good about a fairly still not well-known member of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Stay tuned. It's, for me, yet another, on this free agent frenzy Monday, another example of the desperation at the quarterback position. How difficult, what teams talk themselves into because their choices are limited. To be honest with you, that's why I wondered actually whether, because Cleveland's got a quarterback-friendly head coach, correct? He used to be our coordinator.
Kevin Stefanski.
And I wondered, what about Darnold there? Now, I don't know what kind of money they have. I don't know what their financial situation is, but it ended up not being a massive deal. Right. They're in Deshaun Watson, Suter, and Parisi contract hell,
Big
right?
time, yes.
And I don't know how long that's going to go on. Is it one more year?
At least. Yeah, we looked at it during the season or maybe during the offseason because we were curious about that.
But Shefty is reporting that the Eagles are trading Kenny Pickett to the Cleveland Browns for a 2025 fifth-round pick and a quarterback named Dorian Thompson Robinson.
And with that, I need to go. I do appreciate your call, though.
The Browns they entered Monday with about $13 million in cap space, so they didn't have much. They were in salary cap hell. But you don't bring Pickett in all honesty, with a straight face, thinking he could compete for the starting job, right? I mean, it just shows you how desperate people are at the position. He's just okay. He's never going to be. There's a reason he's already moved around a couple times. He's decent depth, but I just don't think he's a starting quarterback in the upper half of maybe even not even the upper 2/3 of the National Football League. But just it's further indication. Now, there are some people saying that they might have some interest in Daniel Jones, and they might even have some interest in Kirk Cousins if indeed he is ultimately released. So maybe Pickett comes in as just our depth, or as our second guy, whatever the case may be. But there's just not much there, I wouldn't say, for me. But it's there ain't enough quarterbacks. We know this forever. I mean, it's not new, but there's just not enough quarterbacks to go around. The Wolves, the most, I thought, sneaky, interesting moment of the Wolves' pretty easy victory, very entertaining victory, the way the offense played against the San Antonio Spurs Davey came, I want to say, at the end of the third quarter. And the Wolves get the ball on a fast break to try to get one last shot off before the horn. And DiVincenzo heads to the basket, notices a trailing Jalen Clark at the three-point line. And Clark hits a three right before the buzzer. And it was very perceptive of Jim Peterson to pick up on this, because I wondered about it immediately. Clark hits the shot, and he looks like he's just gotten caught speeding.
Yeah.
And we're going, well, that's a weird reaction. But Jim Pete picked up on it. Clark was still bitter about a missed defensive assignment in which the guy he was guarding scored one or two possessions before that. Or maybe it wasn't they didn't even score. It was just that he didn't feel like he did what he was supposed to do on the possession. You look for little things in players, right? You look for little indicators of what young players, where their heads are, what they might be capable of, whether it's worth investing in them, especially if you say, yeah, they got some physical tools here. He's definitely got tools to guard. He prides himself on guarding. But how often do you see that, where a guy hits a three and instead of,
doing the ice in the veins,
prancing or freezing the pose or whatever, and acting like they just won Game 7 of the NBA Finals, he's like slumping his shoulders, looking over at the bench like, yeah, I blew that. I screwed that up. And he's even then later talking to people about it. Those are interesting little telling moments to me that do, to me, it's the underrated, sneaky part of evaluating talent, right? Well, no, that wasn't phony. That was not a guy with phony self-deprecation. He was annoyed that he'd done something where he felt like he had not carried out his defensive assignment. I just thought it was very interesting, and they picked up on it very nicely on the TV broadcast.
And that was the only shot he took last night. It was the only shot he made, and I think that's in the Trent Tucker school of Phil Jackson telling him before Game 6, you're going to get 3 shots, and I need you to make all of them. That's the kind of pressure role players are under. You don't get a lot of looks, you don't get a lot of shots, but you're expected to make the ones that you get. And Clark, I don't think he came into the league as a great shooter. I don't think he came in when they drafted him. And people probably remember why they drafted him. When they drafted him, it was a second-round pick because he was coming off, I think, an Achilles. He was coming off a major injury.
That's correct.
And the whole point was
out for a whole year.
He's available now. We can get him now. In a couple of years, we probably wouldn't get him here. We're going to let him sit, rehab, and play. And it seems like he's developed himself into a pretty solid shooter at all the levels.
Yes, and even more importantly is he'll guard. He'll guard everybody. He will make it that is his passion. That is his calling card, and he seems to relish guarding, which, based on some of the scores we're seeing lately, is not necessarily all of that popular. Did you happen to see the Kevin Durant tweet that was leveled at one Skip Bayless?
I saw the headline about this, but I don't like giving any Bayless-related steam oxygen.
You're too down on him, but we've talked about it.
I understand.
Before, yeah. But
I didn't look at it.
What is I got to find the Durant Twitter handle because it's fancy, isn't it? It's not Kevin Durant.
Yeah, it's something different.
Oh, here it is. Is this it? Yeah, it's got to be 21.1 million. So Bayless is just online now, I guess, and he has something called the Skip Bayless Show, and it captured a moment in which Bayless says, among other things, the more I watch him at age 36, the more he, as in KD, looks mentally semi-retired to me. Durant being Durant, about 30 seconds later, because he can't help himself, which is scary. And Durant.
That's true.
Writes this, and this I'll give him credit for because I think it's clever as hell. Bleep it. We're both washed. It was a great run, Skip Bayless. See, that's well played,
that's good stuff.
Durant rightly gets ripped for rabbit ears and wasting his time getting into silly Twitter battles at 3 a.m. with goofballs.
Yep.
But to me, this one showed a bit of a sense of humor. I'll give him props for this one because I thought it was extremely, extremely well played.
By the way, I just think the phrase "washed" is underutilized and funny.
It is.
When people say he's washed, it's a great phrase.
So we're both washed. Yeah, you're washed, I'm washed, and let's just call
it's a great run.
Let's call it a day. It was a heck of a run for both of us. Bottom of the hour pause. John Krasinski. We call him affectionately Jonny Athletic. He wrote most recently today about the return of one Stifle Tower to the lineup. And did it stifle the new wide open, full court, get the ball inside, go everywhere Wolves offense? No. Might have had their best offensive day of the season. And he was mightily involved. So we'll get to that and more with John Athletic. He's
I like that package.
And he's on the Dan Barrero right now.
That is a nice package.
We certainly will encourage questions, comments to John Athletic. He joins pretty much every Monday, occasionally a different day of the week. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is open for your feedback and your input, 64686. Johnny, I read much earlier a quote you broke out from Julius Randle that obviously fell into the classification of being music to the ears of any coach, dare I say, teammate and fan, regarding Randle's epiphany that he knows he can score, he has scored before, but he has come back from his extended injury absence with a new philosophy, and that is, I'm going to make the right play, I'm going to make a fast play, I'm going to become the point forward that Dan Barrero demanded I become about 2 months ago. Here's the question that a cynic might ask. Does he mean it? Or is this the classic case of he knows his contract situation? He knows that he's got an option for next year, but would love to end up with a contract extension. Maybe he's already seen enough here to say, I'd love to be here. So is this a new Julius Randle, or is this just a Julius Randle who is trying to give himself the best chance to get a long-term contract? And once he would secure it, he would go back to, holding on to the ball for 18 seconds of the 24-second clock.
Yeah, I don't think this is performative, Dan. Certainly, I will say this. I think he recognizes that in Minnesota, with Anthony Edwards here, with a blossoming Jaden McDaniels all of a sudden, with other pieces around him, he cannot be the ISO score first, second, and third type of player that he was in New York. I do think that he understands the conversation around his game and certainly the concerns about it, especially when he first came over here. But then through playing with this group and maybe kind of taking a look around the league at what, his market is, at what other people of his ilk are doing, I do think that there is an epiphany of sorts, that he realizes that he has to play a certain way to A, be effective himself, but then to B, help his team win. And that is the way that he is going to secure his long-term future, whether it's here or elsewhere. It's going to be by him contributing to a winning team and making winning plays. And I think he understands now that that is not going to happen if it's ISO, dribble, jump shot, bully ball to the basket. Like, that's just not going to be the way for him to do it. So good on him for looking at that and seeing it. But I don't think this is a kind of a hoodwinking kind of a situation where he's going to get his money and then revert back. I think that he understands this is what this team needs and what he has to do to repair whatever value has been lost over the last year or so.
You clamored for help along the Vikings' interior offensive line, and they have answered that call. They have answered that plea. The Vikings, according to Tom Pelissero, will sign four-time Pro Bowl center Ryan Kelly, former Colt, on a 2-year, $18 million deal, including a real bargain, only $9 million guaranteed, sources tell Pelissero and Ian Rappaport. After 9 seasons, Kelly moves on from the Colts and provides a much-needed upgrade for Minnesota's interior offensive line. So there you have it, a new center headed the Minnesota Vikings' way. The interior line, it's the start of, one would hope, a major remodeling of probably the weakest part of the offensive line, as even the head coach acknowledged after our playoff disaster.
Big time. And I was kind of starting to get a little nervous for the Vikings because they had been quiet to start this free agent, spend-a-palooza, as you're seeing offensive linemen go off the board elsewhere, getting traded, and those sorts of things. So to get Ryan Kelly comes from a very good offensive line in Indianapolis. He's 31, but here's what I like most about him, Dan. He is 6'4", 300 pounds. Like, that's good. Like, I mean, Garrett Bradbury, God bless him. I think he did a lot with what he had, but what was clear really last season and certainly at the end of the season in the way that Kevin O'Connell remarked about it was they were just giving up too much size on the interior of the offensive line, that it was too easy for them to get physically manhandled by the big hulking defensive tackles that you're going to face, on a regular basis. And so to go get a guy who has serious size, who's got a very good resume, at a position of need, I think that really does help things, and they probably have to be just the start of it. I think they got to add one more body, either in free agency or the draft. Yeah,
there's no question. It's an important. We talked about it earlier today that you have to try to address at least. Now they might be able to do some of this in the draft too. the offensive line, that the Bears had gotten a head start on them by adding 2 guards via trades, including an all-pro guard from the Chiefs. And then they signed the center. I can't remember the name of the center they signed, who's considered, I think, one of the prime centers available on the market. So they, like the Vikings, realized their offensive line was actually even leakier, I think, in some ways than the Vikings. I just don't think you can ever go wrong using your money, using your draft to help yourself along the line of scrimmage, offensive and defensive. We'll get back to some more Viking stuff. I wanted to get to the breaking news part of it a little bit later with Jonny. But first, let's go back to the Wolves. I would put it this way. I mean, my one hesitation is what you have also discussed, is they are in the soft part of their schedule. It's good what they're doing with it, because that's all they can do with it is beat teams, right? But that would be the one question. Is it going to look quite as free-flowing and smooth and wonderful and loosey-goosey when we play Denver, Wednesday night in Denver? But it is an absolute pleasure to watch this form of Julius Randle. It really is. He's a gifted passer, as you well know, and he's always been a good passer. But it's almost like he's got an internal clock that says, I've held the ball long enough. And he's driving and dishing like point guards do. That's basically what he's doing at this point. And the ball it's popping. The ball is out of his hands. And you know this better than I do. The more you do what he's doing, the more teammates move to get open, because they start feeling, well, if I get to certain spots on the floor, he's not going to be shy about giving up the ball and worry about the score. He'll still score enough. That's really not what this team needs from him, but he does provide on a team that doesn't always have a point guard on the floor. And Mike Conley's been better lately, but in and out. This is how he can be the most valuable player to this team.
It 100% is, Dan, and I think that you hit on it in terms of the clock in his head is moving much quicker. He has always been a good passer, as you said. I mean, he's a 5 assist a game guy in New York. But I think one of the problems early on here in the transition to Minnesota was there was way too much standing around and watching Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards just probe and dribble and then wait for something to happen. And what Julius Randle has done now is not only is he passing the ball, but he's moving it quickly. He's making quick decisions. He's putting the ball in the deck, drive, kick, put the ball in the deck, drive, go to the basket, dump off pass. Like everything is sped up. And that what you have seen, I thought watching them against San Antonio last night was their best ball movement game, not just in terms of passing, but also in terms of bodies moving away from the ball. And it's cutting to the basket, and it's relocating around the perimeter to get into Randle's field of vision, because the rest of the guys have steadily come to realize that if they get themselves open, Randle will find them. And generally speaking, Dan, they're getting wide open shots, not just good shots, but wide open shots. And those are a heck of a lot easier to make. It's no coincidence, Dan, that they are just shooting the cover off the ball right now from 3-point range. And you're seeing Randle 10 assists, 9 assists, 9 assists, 5 assists. That's just a product of this new movement and the body movement around the offense. They were very difficult to watch offensively early in the season. Steadily now, over the last month, really, even when Randle was out and you got Naz Reid and you got these young guys in there just running around and moving, I think that's really trickled down to the rest of the guys, and it's starting to take hold a little bit, which is encouraging.
They finally get Rudy back into the discussion yesterday, and it ended up not having any negative impact on the offense. It might have been as good an offensive game as they've had all season. What's going to be the key to continuing to integrate him? And do you think that the head coach is going to be a lot more liberal now, almost liberated about, playing whoever he wants to play in a given situation from several different combinations, given how many players from time to time have contributed? I mean, I hope he sticks with that he doesn't end up reverting to the old, no, here's the guys they're supposed to play. So here are the guys who are play. How's that going to play out the rest of the regular season?
Yeah, it's going to be the thing that I'm watching the most, Dan. We said we had something at the Athletic late last week on just what are the keys to the stretch for every team, and mine was how does this rotation solidify when everyone is back healthy? And Chris Finch said it last night with conviction that he's going to play 10 guys. That those last two spots will probably rotate between Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Rob Dillingham, depending on what's needed on the night. But I also think that he is also going to have to be flexible within the top 8 as well in terms of playing to matchups, playing to who has it going. Last night, Rudy played really, really well, and so he stuck with them a long time. There's going to be nights where Rudy should not be out there late in the fourth quarters. There's going to be nights when Julius Randle isn't working, and he's going to have to sit down, and you play Nas more, or you play Terrence Shannon more, or you do these other different things. And so it's not easy, this approach from Chris Finch. Generally speaking, most NBA head coaches want a set rotation, just run through it, and you adjust and adapt in between in games, but you don't make big major changes. But Finch is going to have to do that, and he already has to some extent over the last 25 games or so. He has shown that he is willing to finish without Rudy. He's willing to finish without Randall. He's willing to, last night, just keep Ant on the bench the whole fourth quarter. It's going to take a lot from Finch, but I think that's what is required of him, is that he's going to have to really read the game well within the game, pick who has it and who doesn't, and just play those accordingly and just let everyone's egos get checked at the door.
So, you've seen, we've had a lot of scores, not just here, but around the league in the 130s and 140s. We've got, Joker getting a triple-double in the first half and another triple-double in the second half. What is going on here? Are we just seeing an incredible flourishing of offensive skill and versatility? Or are we in a kind of a live ball era of professional basketball where whether it's the rules, whether it's interest, defense is now considered something we'll do occasionally, but we're really not interested in trying to lock anybody down the way that we once did?
Yeah, it's interesting, Dan, because, we talked a lot about this last year during the Wolves run in the playoffs and how the NBA had adjusted their officiating and the way they called games to breathe more defense back into the game and allow more physicality and let defenses get away with a little bit more. That seems to have regressed this season. And I would surmise that that's kind of just the natural ebb and flow of a season. I think earlier on in the season, you just kind of let things go a little bit more, let the offense go, and then I think you tighten up how you want to call the game, and you swallow the whistle a little bit more as we get close to the playoffs and into the playoffs. So I think we'll see more defense as we get down the stretch here and into the playoffs. But really, this is a product of two things mostly. One is the analytic boom and the epiphany that happened a little while ago that, hey, 3 is substantially worth more than 2. So we're just going to get a lot more shots up, higher volume, more possessions. And so those scores are going to increase. But number 2 is this is an absolute fact for all of the people who want to disparage the NBA and the league and all these things. There are worthwhile criticisms. But one thing you can't say is there is more talent in this league on every single team from top to bottom than there ever has been. There are no more guys who come in who literally can't shoot at all or can't handle or can't do this or can't do that. Everyone that comes into and gets a spot on the floor can play offensive basketball in this league. That's just the way the talent has been developed, what has been emphasized coming up. And so there are very few weak spots anymore where you don't have to worry about someone hurting you. And that's why Jalen Clark's just efficiency is so important to help him get on the floor because he's such a good defender, but he's still doing just enough offensively to keep defenses honest. There's, back in the day, Jalen Clark would be a 19% 3-point shooter but he would still play big minutes. And so there's just so many guys out there that can hurt you and are skilled offensively that it's just hard to play defense nowadays. And you're seeing that reflected in the numbers in these games.
Jonny Athletic is indeed with us on the Fan. Let's finish up with a couple more things about Vikings and free agency. So, are you at all, as far as I know, he still hasn't signed, even though there's flirtation allegedly going on with at least two teams. Would you jump into the deep end without a life preserver? Would you even be tempted by it, even consider it? And that, of course, I mean getting in bed, so to speak, with Aaron Rodgers.
I am shocked that this has been a credible talking point, in the national media about Rodgers and possibly looking at the Vikings. I just don't see why that makes sense for the Vikings if they are, as I believe they're all in on J.J. McCarthy. I think they believe in him. They think he's going to be a great player, and they want to set him up to succeed. And I just don't see how bringing Aaron Rodgers in would help that in any way, shape, or form. And I just think there's too many distractions. His play has dropped off considerably over the last couple of years. So unlike with Favre, you at least knew that he could still sling it. And Aaron Rodgers, you just wonder if he's still in it, if his heart still wants to be a quarterback, if he's got interest elsewhere, whatever it is. I just think that that's not a place that I would go looking if I were the Vikings. If, I'd look at Daniel Jones. If you can't get Daniel Jones, you look at the Nick Mullins type. I know Mullins went to the Jaguars, but you look at just decent guys who are going to be in the room and help J.J. McCarthy become a really good quarterback. I don't see how it makes any sense to bring Aaron Rodgers into this. I don't know what you think, Dan.
Well, I'm a fraud because I have basically said that logically speaking, on so many levels, this would be the most vivid example of self-mutilation of a franchise since the Herschel Walker trade. And yet I'm perversely fascinated by the possibility of actually doing it. I don't know if it's boredom. I don't know if it's deep down a creeping sense of, but what if? What if after a bad season last year, he says, bleep it, I can't go out like that. You're going to see me prepare in a way I've never prepared before, and I'm going to shock the world. I'm going to take one last shot at this thing, and part of what I think of is the story, obviously. The idea of this town would be on tilt if he actually was signed and he actually did something, where it actually worked. I'm thinking, I don't think we would have seen anything like this, certainly since Favre. And I think this might even, given the circumstances, trump number 4. So I'm a fraud on it. I fully admit it. And maybe it's the old, the old ink-stained wretch in me saying, God, what a story, though. And even if it's awful from a story standpoint, whether it's a great outcome or a disaster, it's a hell of a story. So now, realistically, I don't think there's any reason to think that they're thinking this way, that they're tempted by it. It looks like he's going to probably end up in Pittsburgh, which probably makes the most sense for him, right, at this point, because I think you have a chance to get in the playoffs if you're with the Steelers. But I could also see him saying, "Oh, this is kind of attractive, man. They do have a lot of infrastructure. Word on the street is he likes KOC, he likes the quarterback whisperer." And selfishly, within a week, we were saying, within a week at training camp, he's probably, as Gaardsy said, inviting RFK Jr. to camp. There's just the possibilities for controversy and absurdities and messes are just endless.
It would. I will say this, Dan. I do think it would be exponentially higher in terms of the weirdness level than even Favre, because when Favre came here, everyone hated Favre when he was with the Packers. All the Vikings people hated him. But I think deep down, there was a little bit of begrudging respect of gosh dang, this dude is unbelievable. I hate him, but man, he is a great, great player. I think there's real enmity toward Rodgers in a different way.
Right. Yes.
And so he would come here, and of course everyone would jump on board with the first, 80-yard touchdown he throws to Justin Jefferson. But it would be a different process of opening their hearts to A-Rod versus Favre. And Rodgers is just weird. He's just a different dude that way. Favre was much easier to like. And
yes.
That would be a fascinating process. I do think that there is a chance that if he would be the motivated Rodgers in terms of, because he would face Green Bay twice during the regular season and get up for that. I just think that at this stage of his career, I question if he does have that chip on the shoulder ability anymore. Really, this has been for the last 3, 4, 5 years where, he kind of disappears in the summer. He does some weird ayahuasca thing and he comes back for training camp and just goes. And I don't know if you can just remanufacture that on the spot the way that he would need to play at a high level. And I think ultimately where I stand, Dan, is I'm really fascinated by J.J. McCarthy. I think he's going to be a really good player in this league sooner rather than later. And so I would rather not sacrifice or risk anything at all by bringing in Rodgers. I just think the upside is not high enough for me. But to your point, it would be an unbelievable headline a day story to cover and chronicle for however long it lasts.
You mentioned it. I had sort of written it off, and then that Friday night news dump took place. I think it was Ian Rappaport and one other reporter out of nowhere. Well, Minnesota might be a dark horse spot for Aaron Rodgers. And I'm assuming these are reporters who are usually plugged in. These are not shock jock reporters. Maybe in this case they were doing a little bit of both. I don't know. But that's what reintroduced it in my head. It's I didn't really think there was even any discussion. But they must be hearing that somewhere. And even today, Ben Gessling. Now, maybe Ben was trying to get me going. He's like, I wouldn't be surprised to see if the Vikings kick the tires on Aaron Rodgers.
No. I don't think so.
Then I'm going, wait a minute. So do people know something? What exactly is up here?
I can say, go ahead. Real quick, Dan, on that, I'll just say that our people at The Athletic who are really plugged in have basically said to me, no one has said that's off the table with the Vikings, and that's why they're leaving it open, leaving this kind of possibility open. That said, a lot of people thought that Sam Darnold was going to come back here as a backup, and I thought that was never going to happen either. So we'll see. I guess we'll see, but I would be shocked if it happened. I'll just say that.
Last item: should there be any remorse from the Vikings given the ultimate price tag for Darnold in Seattle, which is, it's 3 years, basically, $33 million a year or $35 million a year, whatever. And it's so basically, and it's 55 guaranteed. So basically, year 3 is meaningless. You could argue under those conditions. Is it a reasonable enough number that you think Vikings fans should have any remorse, or the Vikings themselves, about maybe actually trying to play around with this thing and getting close enough, maybe not to the number, but close enough that Darnold might have had his head turned?
Yeah, I actually don't think so in this case, Dan, because Sam Darnold took that deal, and he knows that he's going there to be the starter. Number one, that's his job. They traded Geno Smith. So if he had to take even a little bit of a haircut on whatever his asking price was, he is that, market value for a quarterback is what, $40 million, $38 million.
Right.
So he's a little under that. But the opportunity, I think, would get him to take that money. Would he take the same or even a little less to stay in Minnesota with J.J. McCarthy here? I don't think he would have. So I don't know that opportunity was there for the Vikings to say, even if they had offered him the exact same deal, I think that Sam Darnold would take Seattle over Minnesota just because there is no question that is his job in Seattle. He'd have to at the very least compete for it, and he may even start out as the backup here unless JJ stumbled. So did the Vikings misread the market or let something go? I really don't think so in this case, because I think that they know they have so many other needs. They know they have very few draft picks, so they have to use their money wisely in free agency and go get offensive line help and go get defensive help and do a bunch of things. And so even if they would have given Darnold the same exact deal, it would have cut into their ability to add and supplement around them. And I just think that's ultimately what it came down to.
Johnny, we appreciate you're not going to Denver, are you, with the club? You've been on the last road. Or you are going to Denver, the rumor is.
Why? Yeah, why would you doubt me?
Excellent.
first time back since Game 7 of that last series, the greatest basketball experience I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I got to be back for that.
Yeah,
so.
There's no question. I guess I was an idiot for not even just assuming it. I thought, well, I don't know what your budget is. You just done a road trip, but now I know you're ramping this thing up as we get closer to the end of the season. So we will be in touch as well. Have fun in Denver, and we'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good, Dan.
Thank you, Johnny. That is John Krasinski joining us on The Fan. We went a little bit long with him. We'll recap the day in pro football free agency, some of the Vikings additions and subtractions, and where the story goes from here. Perhaps cover a couple of other controversial subjects, because that's what we're about on this show, controversy, when we come back right here in The Fan. There's some, I sense, Gaardsy, what's the word I want to use here? Melodrama regarding reaction to even the discussion of flirting, playing footsie with Aaron Rodgers online here. Example. Dan, I think I've texted you this before, writes Mike from Bismarck, but as a 68-year-old who's been a Vikings fan my entire life, if the Vikings sign Aaron Rodgers, I'm done with the Vikings forever. Okay. Come on. Calm down. What exactly do you think you're standing for? What is it? It's just sports. It's
not the Vikings. That's not what the Vikings have told us.
That's true. It's what they've, but that's actually what it is, and I don't even believe it. I'm not discounting or dismissing the legitimate opinion of, I don't want to mess with this. Are you kidding me? I respect that opinion. I can't mock that opinion, but some of the drama I'm getting a bunch of those, like, oh, that's it. That'd be the last straw. And you know, and I know it's not even true.
60 years of Vikings football, this would be the one. The heartbreak we've all been through. 27 touchdown passes, 11 picks. He wasn't very good.
He was not very good, but he wasn't awful, and he was he was in about, I think, as dysfunctional a situation as you can get. Here's the irony of it. Throughout his career, he's been known as what? A quarterback who elevates the people around him. I'm not sure he can do that anymore. I'm not sure he has to do that here. Maybe he gets helped out. You go back even to the Green Bay, the late Green Bay glory days. Aaron Jones. He had receivers who could get the job done. Has he ever had a JJ? Has he ever had a Justin Jefferson? I'm not sure.
Not really.
No.
But that's what I was going to ask. Which receiver in our group of receivers is he going to have the cojones to side-eye when he throws a pick? Because that's another part of his repertoire, right?
Yes.
Looking over at the coach,
that's
like,
the beauty of
you
it.
saw it, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, who's going to take his side if he overthrows Justin Jefferson and it's intercepted by somebody? Darius Slay picks him off. You know, who's going to say, oh, yeah, Rodgers was right. JJ ran the wrong route? Because you know he can't. That never leaves him. No darkness retreat will ever knock that out. That it's never his fault when he doesn't play well.
That's a legitimate concern.
Now, Addison might do something dumb during the game. That's happened before.
That's true.
But I don't think Hawkinson. I think Hawkinson's pretty reliable. Aaron Jones, pretty good pass catcher.
This is from 612 guy. Dan, my first Vikings game was their very first home game. I'm 71 years old. Gone to hundreds of games. If the Vikings sign Rodgers, I will smile and enjoy the stories that will follow. Smile, enjoy the stories that will follow. Simple as that.
I do think you're being clouded. You want it. You don't have to live with the emotional scars that the rest of us do here. This is why you're not one of us.
There's no emotional scars if you win with them. Well, what are the emotional scars if you win with them?
Yeah. But that's not what you're...
J.J. McCarthy, I don't know how to break it to you people, but we don't even know if he can walk onto a field successfully with his knee not collapsing. And I'm only being a little bit sorry. We don't. We have no idea. They had to go in a second time on whatever you want to say. I'm with Seifert. They went in and did something they weren't supposed to have to do. Now that doesn't mean his career's over, but it indicates. I bet you there's a little bit of concern about how quickly this thing can come together. 612 guy, Barrario, you are why I turn off KFAN regularly. If I had $1 for all the people who said they turn off KFAN regularly, I'd be living on an ocean retreat in Maui today.
I think you still could do that.
So stop it with the you listen to the station all of the time. And what is it I'm saying? It's just an opinion. Why is it offensive to people? I don't understand. That's what sports is. Should we take a chance on this guy? It's full of risk. It's a volatile situation, but it's kind of what sports is. Maybe I don't have enough. Maybe it's been too long since I've seen J.J. McCarthy throw a pass. I don't know.
Do you need to watch the Raider preseason game again? Watch back that drive.
Was that before or after the pick?
After.
Oh, okay.
It was after. But it was about the response, Dan.
Yeah.
How he came back and attacked the response. Maybe watch that a second time. Watch that tonight.
By the way, Devontae Adams, Rams, right?
Yeah.
He goes to the Rams, 2-year deal.
They're dangerous.
And Cooper Kupp, the latest is if they can't get a deal for him, they're going to cut him. How about here? How about as our third wide receiver? Or maybe second wide receiver? I don't know. Does Cooper Kupp have anything left? That's the question.
It's the question that he needs to answer. You're right. Because he didn't, he was around last year.
To be honest with you, how much does Devontae have left?
I know.
I think that's a fair question, too, because that marriage didn't exactly flourish, did it?
But that's also the New York stuff.
That's true.
That whole thing was a mess.
Yeah, you're right about that.
I'd take my chances with Devontae Adams.
Real quick, before we wrap up this segment, I've got about a minute, and it's perfect because that's all this is worth. I got a couple messages yesterday during the show of people who said they were very disappointed that I didn't weigh in on or get into all of the discussion regarding the Royce social media kerfuffle. I did what I did, which was ignore it because that's what I think it's worth. I'm not lying to you. Believe me, I can get worked up about stuff that's not worth getting worked up over, but every once in a while I say, the best thing I can do is give it the treatment I think it deserves. I don't think it's a story. I don't think it's worth 5 minutes of our show. I just don't. I think it was the classic sort of pitchforkian sort of story that people are already kind of forgetting about. And it was built on an extremely faulty premise. And we've talked about this for too long. So to the guy who yesterday said, well, the fact that you're not speaking about this speaks volumes. You don't get to decide what you believe me not talking about it should be interpreted as. When you get your own show, you can do that. I can keep it real simple and say, I haven't talked about it and won't talk about it because it's not worth any of our time. It's just not. It's about as big a non-story. Well, I won't say as big, but it's certainly mainly an extremely non-story story that it bores me. It utterly and completely bores me. It's not worth the time.
Man.
Show wrap brought to you by American Pressure, commercial grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the bumper to bumper show wrap.
So usually we have Louie on Tuesday. We had him today in studio between 4 and 5. So no Louie tomorrow, I'm assuming. Are we wide open right now?
We have Kevin Seifert.
Oh, Seifert, that's right. The return of Seifert.
And we think we have Mike Conley.
Oh, okay. Uncle Mike, as the players affectionately refer to him, who's having kind of a nice little resurgence here. We'll see if he's able to sustain that, because that also would be very helpful. So that's the tentative plan for the Tuesday show. We had bonus Ben Gessling today at 3:15, if you are so inclined, on the Vikings moves. And by the way, the center we got, did I say it? Is he from the Colts?
Yes.
Do we know he's going to play center? Is he a center guard? Do we know? So is Bradbury out?
That's
what we're
thinking.
Prevailing wisdom?
That's what we're thinking.
And somebody said that was KOC on with PA when PA was filling in last night on the Wolves radio broadcast?
I did see a tweet about that from Paul Allen last night.
Cup writes, 701 guy will be a Viking. KOC told PA at the Wolves game that he was the best slot receiver in the league. I don't think he would say that about someone not on his roster. Maybe it's foreshadowing, though.
It could be, but KOC is pretty complimentary to everybody.
That's true. But, something maybe to watch. Maybe he was just in his own way trying to give us a little morsel there, a little hint about what might be coming if Kupp ends up being cut, which he hasn't been yet. They're still trying to work out a trade for him.
I think that's right. Yep.
I think that's where that stands. So, I'm assuming that by this time tomorrow, Rodgers will be somewhere. Don't you think? This stuff with the quarterbacks, I think the main names tends to go fast. Maybe it's longer with him. I don't know. I mean, the interesting issue with him is what if the money, let's say the money's much better with the Giants than Pittsburgh. Those are the front runners. With us as the dark horse. Don't be mad at me. I'm just quoting national media jackals and even local ones. What if the money's a lot greater in New York than Pittsburgh? Is he forced to take the money? Because New York,
I don't think he is.
For the second straight year in New York, by mid-season, he may be playing for a team that's firing its head coach. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it could easily, if it continues to fall apart there. I think you go to Pittsburgh. So I think you got to go to Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Better team. You get a chance to play for a really, established coach in Tomlin. See where and
Metcalf's there
make
now.
The playoffs.
You've got some more. You got better receiving options there. You got a good defense there. So, they were in the hunt with Fields and Russell Wilson all year.
Yeah. Russell Wilson, by the way, has not landed anywhere yet, right?
Correct.
That's another name out there. Who are the other? Are there any other quarterback names we're forgetting?
Probably.
Like starting names? No, I don't think so.
I know that Sauce and Nordo will break it all down on Free Agent Frenzy.
That's coming up next, 6:30 to 8.
Following us,
and that's not taped. That'll be live.
They're right behind me.
I know. I'm aware.
I'm telling the audience.
6:30 until 8 p.m. this evening, immediately following. So there's no Fan and a Man in the Air.
None.
There's no program password.
None.
Rewind or whatever. It's live. A live look at the day in free agency, the first day in free agency. And so the big names for us, and will you give me the name of the center again that we got?
Ryan Kelly.
And then we got a cornerback. We don't have A-Raj, but we got I-Raj, as in Isaiah Rodgers, a former Eagles cornerback. Those are our names. We lost Darnold. We lost our guy, Cam Bynum. We lost I think, underrated Johnny Munt.
You always loved Munt.
I like Johnny Munt. I like saying his name. That's some of it. And then we lost our backup quarterback, Nick Mullins.
You also loved Mullins.
And Pastronaut is no longer an option as a bridge quarterback. He signed a 2-year deal with New England.
How many 3rd and 12s after Darnold had just been sacked and nearly killed did Nick Mullins come in and save this season?
Oh, yeah, he did.
With like a 15-yard dart.
For like one play.
Jalen Clark.
Go back to the bench.
Coming off the bench.
You're right.
Shooting his shot and going back to stand next to KOC.
You're going to miss him.
That was a weapon.
That's it.
Backup guy comes in cold, converts a big 3rd down.
The other open question right now is the future of Daniel Jones. Published reports indicate that he is negotiating with 2 teams, us and the Indianapolis Colts, who say the Colts have said we want competition at our starting position, even though we got a highly touted, if struggling, phenom quarterback, right? So that's what that at this point allegedly comes down to. Is and if you don't get Cook, then you are hardcore in the business of trying to find somebody who could play the position if for some reason the new guy struggles or gets physically can't, he has a setback or something like that. You do want to have somebody who can play the position. Now, if you go get Rodgers, I don't think you can say to Rodgers, we're happy to have you as a backup. And then if our starter gets hurt or struggles a little, we'll put you in. I'm guessing that would be a toxic situation. If you bring A-Raj in, I think you're probably going to have to hand him the keys, don't you think?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Although I'm kind of for now anything that's going to make FanLine more exciting the first few weeks.
Oh, it'd be great.
For Nordo and Ron Johnson.
How good would that be? Are you kidding me? Oh, be the best. All right, so live look at the first day of free agency with Nordo and Sauce between now and 8 o'clock. So keep it right here, FM 100.3 or via the iHeartRadio app. We will talk to you tomorrow beginning at 3 o'clock.
Where are we, America?
PayPal lets you pay all your pals, like your graduation gifters.
Who's paying for the mattress topper?
You mean the beanbag chair?
Aren't we getting a mini fridge?
Can we create a pool on PayPal? It lets us collect the money before we buy.
Ooh, yes, that's smart.
Glad we can agree on something.
Easily pool, split, and send money with PayPal. Get started in the PayPal app. A PayPal account is required to send and receive money. A balance account is required to create a pool.
Optimize your nutrition with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart and Protein Plus. Factor's keto meals can help you lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks. Get started at factormeals.com/factor50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Weight loss with Factor Keto based on a randomized controlled clinical trial. Results will vary depending on diet and exercise.